So in this video, I want to talk about what can you do if you just can't find a good placement and color for the text that you want to add to your design. In my case, I want to add the word botanical garden to this cover. The downside is no matter what color or value I make it, there's no good place to put it. If I make it completely white or a light color, well, obviously it's too light up here, and if I place it down here, there are some darker elements, but there's also a very light element, so I can't read it. If I go for solid black, again, that's difficult to read because there's not enough contrast in the darker elements here, and there's even some darker elements here that makes it difficult to read. The truth is, there's no good value or color or anything that I can place to make my text for it to stand out and show up really, really well. What I need to do is I need to create or modify the background so that I can add on that kind of value that I need for my design. The first thing you can do is to add a band of color behind your text but in front of your image. Now I'm working in Photoshop, so I'm just going to choose my simple rectangle tool and I'm going to fill it in with a color that seems to match the overall design that I have. Maybe in this case I'll choose kind of a darkish green. When I create the band of color, it needs to be large enough that it fills out the area and gives me plenty of room to place my text on top of. This is a great simple solution that quickly adds contrast to the area that we're working with. Let's get rid of the white border that's around it, and now it actually works out really good. If you want to still be able to see the image behind it, consider playing around with some of your blending modes for these objects. With the rectangle selected, I can change it to multiply, and I can still keep it as a nice darker background, and I can read the text that's on top of that. So that's a simple and easy way of doing it. If I wanted my text to be darker, so let's change it over to a darker version of the color. Obviously that's not going to work. But all I've got to do is either choose a lighter color for my box, or I can change up the blending mode to something like screen or even overlay, and that will give me a lighter thing to place everything on top of for this. So adding a shape of color or a shape of value behind your text is the first easiest thing you can do to add a simple design. Another thing you can do, let's swap this back over to a lighter color, is by adding a drop shadow to your text. Now this is where you need to be very subtle about how you do it. With my text selected, I can open up my drop shadow settings, and we don't want the drop shadow to overpower the entire design. So whenever I do a drop shadow, I try to keep the opacity, the distance, and the spread as minimal as possible. In my case, if I bring out the distance, let's have it go the same direction as the light. Notice that it has currently a very, very dark shadow. That's okay in giving myself a little bit of contrast, but I'm going to drop the opacity of it just a bit. I'm going to bring the distance in so I can see it on all the edges. From here I can even play around with the spread and size of it to make it a little bit more subtle, but still giving me that nice dark background and contrast. Another thing to know about drop shadows, rather than keeping it the default solid black, feel free to use or incorporate some of the colors that are already in your design. In this case, I think a dark green would make this show up really, really well. And now I've got a drop shadow that brings forward the lighter text, and I've even got it on top of a light background, and it's still nice and readable. A final way of giving yourself a background rather than using a solid shape is actually to use another portion of your image and repeat that into an area that you can put behind your text. Here's what I mean. I'm going to get rid of my rectangle and also my text for now. Let's work on our background layer. With it selected, let's say I wanted to choose part of the petals that were up here and use that as a backdrop. I'm going to choose my selection tool, in this case my lasso selection, and I'm just going to quickly and easily choose part of those petals that's placed right here. With that, we'll go up to Edit and Copy, and then Edit and Paste. And in Photoshop, that's going to give me a new layer with that copy of the petals on top of this. With that done, I'm going to rotate it and let it fill out this entire bottom portion of my design. And I can place it till it gets me a good, nice little area to work in. What I need to do now is to erase away the white portion. This is where we can simply grab our eraser tool and carefully erase it away until I get the edges that I want. I want to make my edge and use a brush that's nice and soft to give me a good contrast between those two parts. This would also be helpful to use a layer mask if you didn't want the hassle of losing all of your pixels. That layer mask gives you the ability to undo any erasing that you've done. The main thing is I just want to give myself some pixels to be able to place something on. Since I'm using an image, this is a great way to fill in this area with something that fits the overall colors of your image that you have too. You can also move your image around your original image by unlocking it and pulling it up and repositioning it on your page. So this way I can fill out this whole area much, much better. With this area now open, I can turn on my text and I can place it down here at the bottom. I can even make it full white. Let's throw it over to the other side for the alignment. I can even get rid of my drop shadow. That's not necessary because now there's enough contrast to be able to read this. So using a band of color, using part of your image just kind of as an ambiguous little portion, or giving yourself a drop shadow or an outer glow is a great way of adding more contrast for your overall text that you can work within your background.